She rescued his cattle during the storm. The wealthy rancher called her a miracle. The sky above the Aurora 7 plains was turning a dark, bruised purple. Clouds rolled across the horizon in thick, angry waves, carrying the promise of the fiercest storm anyone on the ranch had seen in years. The wind had begun to pick up, whistling through the tall grass and rattling the solar panels on the edge of the property. Jard Kale stood on the porch of his main house, his eyes scanning the horizon. He had grown used to the planet's temperamental weather, but even he had to admit that the sight made his stomach tighten. Jard's ranch was not just any ranch. It sprawled over hundreds of acres, filled with herds of cattle genetically adapted to Aurora 7's extreme conditions. Each animal had been engineered for strength, endurance, and a resistance to the planet's unpredictable storms. Technology ran through every part of the operation. Automated drones patrolled the pastures, feeding the herds when grass was scarce, repairing broken fences, and guiding the cattle back to their pens when the wind threatened to scatter them. But even with all his wealth, technology, and planning, Jard knew that nature was unpredictable. He turned away from the horizon just as a low rumble of thunder shook the ground beneath him. He swallowed hard and called out to his ranch hands, "Get the storm enclosures ready. All drones on standby. Keep the cattle inside the main pens." Now, the workers moved quickly, barking orders at each other as they activated protective systems. Jard's oldest drone, a heavy-duty model designed for the wildest storms, lifted off the ground and hovered above the grazing field. Its sensors scanned for danger, while its automated arms extended to reinforce the enclosures around the pens. Despite the preparation, Jard could feel unease settling in his chest. It was at that moment that the visitor appeared. She came riding a rugged all-terrain vehicle that kicked up dust and loose stones from the dry dirt road. Her long coat flapped violently in the wind, and her hair whipped around her face as she braked in front of the main house. She looked almost like she had materialized from the storm itself, small and defiant against the gathering chaos. Jard squinted through the storm-darkened light. "Who?" he muttered, then hurried down the steps to meet her. The woman lifted her helmet, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes and a streak of dirt across her cheek. "I'm Myra," she said, her voice steady even as the wind howled around her. "I'm looking for shelter. I saw the storm coming from miles away. Thought I could take cover here." Jard frowned, suspicious but intrigued. Outsiders rarely ventured so far into this part of Aurora 7. "This isn't exactly a safe place for visitors," he said, glancing toward the plains where the first sheets of rain were already slashing across the horizon. "We can provide shelter, but the storm is coming fast. You need to get inside now." Myra nodded and followed him toward the house. She moved with a quiet confidence that made Jard uneasy in a way he hadn't felt in years. Even as the rain began to drum on the roof and the wind bent the metal fences, she seemed perfectly calm. Inside the control room, Jard turned to watch the storm's progress on the monitors. The sensors on the drones had detected massive winds moving faster than any system could reliably handle. "This isn't just any storm," he muttered. "It's worse than last year's." "The drones won't be enough." Myra glanced at the screens, her eyes flicking from one feed to another. "Those drones are smart," she said, "but they only follow patterns. They can't predict how the herd will scatter when panic hits." "The animals' instincts are faster than any program." Jard's frown deepened. "You're telling me they'll get out?" "They will try to run," she said calmly. "But if we guide them carefully, we can limit the damage. Humans can do what machines cannot. We can think differently." "Adapt?" Jard looked at her skeptically, but there was something in her voice, a certainty that made him pause. The storm was moving faster than anyone had expected. Lightning struck nearby, illuminating the field in jagged white flashes. The sound of thunder followed almost immediately, shaking the walls of the control room. Without another word, Myra grabbed a stormproof jacket from a rack. "I'm going out," she said simply. Jard stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Are you crazy? It's dangerous out there." She shook her head, her eyes steady. "No, the danger is already here. The question is whether we act or watch the cattle get lost to the storm. I'll be fine. I know how to move in this weather." Jard hesitated, then finally stepped aside. He could only watch as she mounted a smaller all-terrain vehicle and drove toward the first grazing fields. Her figure became small against the curtain of rain, but she moved with purpose, scanning the herd and anticipating their panic. The storm hit fully then, with winds strong enough to bend the reinforced fences. Rain lashed down in sheets, and lightning struck dangerously close to the herd. Panic spread through the animals, and several cattle bolted, running blindly across the open plains. The drones attempted to intercept them, but some were disabled by the electromagnetic surges from the storm. Automated systems were failing, and Jard's heart sank. But Myra was undeterred. She weaved through the chaos with human intuition that no drone could match. She signaled to the cattle using light, sound, and subtle movements, guiding them toward safer enclosures. When a bolt of lightning struck a nearby fence, she ducked instinctively and recalibrated her path, all while keeping an eye on the runaway herd. Jard watched through the control room monitors, astonished. Myra moved with a combination of speed, caution, and foresight. She anticipated the cattle's panic before it even happened, moving in ways he could not have predicted. She was human, and it made all the difference. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The storm raged on, each moment bringing new challenges. A flash flood threatened the low-lying fields, debris littered the pasture, and the wind toppled a feed silo. Yet Myra continued, unyielding. She rescued a calf trapped in a broken fence, guided a frightened cow through a patch of lightning-struck ground, and even managed to coax the more stubborn animals back toward safety. Inside, Jard could hardly believe what he was seeing. He had always trusted technology. He had always believed that machines could handle the harshest conditions. But here, in the middle of a storm that could have destroyed everything, it was human ingenuity and courage that mattered. One person, alone, adapting in real time, was accomplishing what hundreds of automated systems could not. The storm showed no sign of relenting, yet Myra's determination never wavered. She moved like a force of nature herself, quick to respond, precise in her decisions, and tireless despite the harsh conditions. It was as if she had a direct connection to the land and the animals, understanding their instincts in a way no one else could. By nightfall, the worst of the storm began to pass. The winds lessened, and the rain slowed to a drizzle, leaving the plains slick and muddy. Jard stepped outside to see the results. The pens were nearly full, and the cattle, though stressed and scattered, were mostly safe. Myra was already back at the house, her clothes soaked, hair plastered to her face, but a calm smile on her lips. Jard walked toward her, awestruck. You saved most of them," he said, his voice thick with disbelief. "I didn't think anyone could do it, not even my drones." Myra shook her head, shrugging modestly. "The drones help, but they can't think like a human. They can't improvise, can't anticipate. The storm didn't follow their patterns. It followed nature's. That's why I had to go out there." Jard studied her, finally understanding something he had never fully realized. Humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and capable of creativity in moments of chaos. Technology could assist, but it could not replace that. "I've never seen anyone like you," he said softly. "You're a miracle," Myra smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe just someone who knows how to stay calm and act when it matters. Anyone can do it with the right instincts." The night fell completely, leaving the ranch quiet except for the occasional drip of water from broken roofs and the soft lowing of cattle settling back into their pens. The storm was over, but its lesson lingered. Jard had learned something he hadn't known he needed to. Wealth, technology, and careful planning were important, but they were not enough. Human courage, intuition, and quick thinking could accomplish miracles where machines failed. As he watched Myra move around the house, checking on supplies and making notes about which enclosures needed repair, Jard realized she had changed the ranch forever. Not just by saving the cattle, but by reminding him of the power humans had, the power to adapt, survive, and overcome, no matter how fierce the storm. By the time the sky cleared enough to reveal the twin moons of Aurora 7, the plains were calm again. The air smelled of wet earth and ozone, and the first hints of sunlight peeked over the horizon. Jard felt a rare sense of peace. The herd was safe, the storm had passed, and a new kind of hope had arrived at his ranch, in the form of one extraordinary human who had faced chaos head-on and won. The morning after the storm, the ranch was quiet, almost eerily so. Patches of mud and water had replaced the usual dust, and broken fences and flattened grass marked the areas where the wind had been strongest. Jard Kale walked through the pastures, inspecting the damage. His eyes fell on the cattle, grazing cautiously, their ears flicking at every sound. Most had survived the storm, thanks to the quick thinking of the stranger, Myra, who now moved about the ranch checking fences and feeding stations. Myra worked methodically, her hands steady even as the ground beneath her squelched with mud. She knelt by a fence post, examining the splintered wood and metal wiring. "These will need to be replaced soon," she said quietly to herself. "The next storm could easily destroy them if we don't fix them properly." Jard approached her, careful not to startle her. "You don't have to do all this," he said. "We have ranch hands. They can repair the fences." She looked up at him, her eyes sharp and clear. "The ranch hands can help, yes," she said, "but the storm showed me where the weak points are. If we don't reinforce these spots, the next time the wind comes, it will be worse." Jard nodded, impressed despite himself. Myra had an instinct for the land and the animals that no technology or training had given him. She moved with purpose, thinking ahead, anticipating problems before they happened. It was as if she had a map in her mind of how the ranch worked, even though she had only arrived a day ago. They walked toward one of the pens where a small group of calves huddled together, their coats wet and muddy. One calf, smaller than the others, limped slightly. Myra knelt beside it and gently examined its leg. "Nothing broken," she said, smiling faintly. "Just bruised and scared. Give it time, it will recover." Jard watched her, amazed at how natural she seemed with the animals. He had grown up around them, studied them for years, and yet here was someone new who understood their instincts better than he did. "You really are something else," he said quietly. "I've never seen anyone move like that during a storm. You were incredible." Myra shrugged, wiping her hands on a towel she had brought from the house. "I just reacted. Animals panic when they feel danger. Humans can think, adapt, and lead. That's all I did." Jard shook his head, unable to dismiss the feeling of awe that clung to him. He had trusted machines to protect his herd, and while they had helped, it was human instinct and courage that had made the difference. Myra had reminded him of something he had forgotten. Sometimes, survival depended on quick thinking and action, not wealth or technology. The day moved on, and the ranch hands began to arrive, assessing the storm damage. Broken fences were patched, damaged feed stations repaired, and water channels cleared of debris. Myra directed them efficiently, explaining which areas needed immediate attention and which could wait. Her calm, confident tone gave the workers a sense of order amid the chaos. Even the oldest ranch hands, who had survived more storms than they cared to count, watched her with respect. By midday, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting long shadows across the wet plains. Jard decided it was time to check the perimeter, making sure no cattle had wandered too far. He called out to Myra, "Come with me, let's see if anyone strayed." She followed without hesitation, climbing into one of the all-terrain vehicles. They drove across the wet fields, the tires sinking slightly into the soft earth. Every few minutes, Myra pointed to a small group of animals hiding behind debris or huddled in low-lying areas. "There," she said, guiding Jard's attention. "See them. They're scared, but they'll follow if we move slowly and calmly." They worked methodically, coaxing the scattered cattle back toward the main pens. Myra's approach was simple but effective. She moved with patience, using gestures and sounds the animals understood. Where the drones might have forced them or startled them further, she guided them gently. Every move was calculated but flexible, adapting to the cattle's reactions. By late afternoon, most of the herd had returned safely. The remaining cattle were stubborn or frightened, hiding behind rocks or in thick brush. Jard was about to suggest sending a drone to herd them when Myra stopped him. "Let them be for now," she said. "Panic won't help. We wait, observe, and then act. Forcing them out now will just scatter them again." Jard hesitated, then nodded. He had learned by now that her instincts were rarely wrong. He followed her lead, watching as she studied the herd, noting patterns in their behavior. She moved silently through the field, approaching the shyest cattle with care, gradually gaining their trust. As evening approached, the last of the cattle returned. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the wet plains. The ranch was quiet again, filled with the sounds of lowing cattle and dripping water. Jard finally allowed himself to breathe. The herd was safe, the storm had passed, and for the first time he realized how valuable human intuition was, how it could succeed where machines failed. Myra walked back to the main house, brushing mud from her coat. "You rely too much on technology," she said lightly, almost as if talking to herself. "Machines are tools, but they cannot replace the mind, the heart, or instinct." Jard smiled, feeling a mix of admiration and humility. "You're right," he admitted. "I've always trusted what I could control, but you've shown me what I can't control is just as important. Human judgment, action, courage, that's what matters in the end." Myra didn't answer, her eyes scanning the horizon. Even now, she seemed to anticipate the land and weather, watching for problems before they appeared. Jard realized that this was what set humans apart, the ability to think, to adapt, and to act when every variable seemed against them. That night, the ranch was quiet except for the low hum of the remaining drones and the soft breathing of the cattle. Myra helped set up temporary shelters and reinforced fencing, her energy undiminished despite the storm and long day. Jard watched from the porch, a growing sense of respect and admiration swelling in him. He knew he had witnessed something rare, a human who could combine intelligence, intuition, and courage to achieve what even machines could not. The following morning, Myra walked the fields again, this time inspecting the soil and grass. She measured how much the storm had damaged the land and began making plans to prevent future disasters. She spoke quietly to the ranch hands, explaining new techniques and methods. "We need to plan for the worst," she said. "Not just the weather, but everything. Predators, sickness, flood. If we prepare, we survive. If we rely solely on machines, we fail." Jard followed her, observing the way she worked. Her methods were simple, yet precise. She anticipated problems before they arose, thought ahead, and adjusted her plans as needed. Every decision she made had a purpose, yet she remained flexible, ready to adapt to whatever the ranch or the herd required. He realized that her presence had changed more than just the safety of the cattle. She had changed the entire way the ranch operated. Where he had relied on technology, she relied on observation, intuition, and a deep understanding of her surroundings. It was a lesson he had never learned in school, training, or through machines. Humans had an advantage machines could never match. By midday, the ranch was running smoothly again, with the herd settled and the workers following Myra's guidance. Jard finally allowed himself to relax, leaning against a fence post as he watched her direct the final repairs. Despite the chaos of the storm, the ranch had survived, and it was clear who had truly saved it. Myra glanced at him briefly, as if sensing his thoughts. "You don't have to say it," she said with a small smile. "The storm taught us all something, didn't it?" Jard nodded slowly, the respect in his eyes clear. "Yes," he said. "It reminded me that sometimes the most important tools are not machines or money, they are humans. Humans who think, adapt, and act when it matters most." The sun was high now, drying the mud and warming the plains. The storm was a memory, but its lessons lingered. Jard knew that the ranch would face many more challenges: storms, predators, equipment failures. But he also knew that with someone like Myra, those challenges could be met. Human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability had proven themselves, and Jard felt a deep sense of hope for the future of his ranch. As Myra checked the last of the fences and returned to the main house, Jard called out to her. "You've earned more than my respect," he said. "You've earned a place here. I want you to stay to help me run this ranch, not as an employee, but as a partner." Myra paused, looking out over the herd in the fields. Then she smiled, a quiet, confident smile. "I'll stay," she said, "but only if you remember what we learned. Technology is helpful, but humans make the difference." Jard smiled, a feeling of pride and anticipation swelling inside him. The ranch had survived the storm, and now, with Myra's guidance, it was stronger than ever. The lesson was clear. When humans faced chaos with courage and intelligence, there was no challenge they could not overcome. As the day came to a close, the plains were bathed in golden light, the herd grazing peacefully, and the ranch standing as a testament to human resilience. Jard realized that the storm had been more than a challenge, it had been a test. And for the first time in years, he understood that humans, not machines, were the true miracle of survival. The morning after the storm's destruction, the ranch seemed almost peaceful, but Jard Kale knew better. Nature was never truly calm, and surviving one storm did not mean the challenges were over. As he walked through the wet fields, inspecting fences and checking the herd, he felt a new unease creeping in. Some of the cattle were restless, shifting their weight and tossing their heads as if sensing danger. The storm had passed, but something else lingered, a silent, unpredictable threat. Myra, however, moved among the cattle with her usual calm and purpose. She had already repaired the weakest fences and guided the remaining calves back to their pens. Her hands moved with precision, tying broken wires and adjusting supports, while her eyes scanned the pastures for any hint of trouble. She had become the quiet center of the ranch, a human force of order amid the chaos of nature. Jard approached her, brushing mud from his boots. "You're moving fast," he said. "I thought we could wait for the hands to finish the repairs." "You don't need to do everything yourself." Myra looked up, her eyes sharp. "I know what's been damaged," she said simply. "And I know which areas will fail first if we leave them to chance. We can't rely solely on the workers to see it like I do. Some problems only become visible when you anticipate them." Jard nodded slowly, realizing she was right. Machines and even experienced ranch hands could fix what they saw, but anticipating what might happen, that was something only a human mind could do. Myra had already saved the herd from destruction once. Now she was protecting it from the hidden dangers left behind. The sun rose higher, drying the mud and warming the air, but the calm was deceptive. Myra paused at the edge of a low hill, peering at the distant tree line. Her brow furrowed. "Something's not right," she said. "Some of the cattle near the northern pastures are uneasy. I can feel it. They're sensing a predator." Jard frowned. "A predator." On Aurora 7, most of the planet's dangerous creatures had been eliminated or controlled, but he knew the ecosystem was still unpredictable. Myra nodded. "Yes, I've seen signs, broken branches, unusual tracks, faint markings in the soil. If we don't act, it could harm the herd." He looked at her, uncertainty mixed with trust. "What do you want to do?" "We prepare," she said. "We can't fight it head-on, but we can protect the cattle. Humans can adapt faster than machines. We need to use the terrain and herd behavior to our advantage." Jard watched her as she climbed onto one of the all-terrain vehicles. She drove toward the northern pastures, scanning the ground with careful eyes. "Watch how she reads the land," he muttered to himself. "She can see patterns even in chaos." As they approached the area, the signs became clearer. Footprints, large, clawed, marred the soft earth. Broken twigs littered the path where a predator had passed. The northern cows were grouped tightly together, lowing in anxious, rhythmic patterns. Myra dismounted, kneeling to examine the tracks. "This is a young predator," she said quietly. "It's curious, not hungry yet, but it will test the herd. If we're not ready, it could injure a calf or cause panic." Jard swallowed hard. "And what do we do?" Myra stood, surveying the open land. "We guide the herd. Humans can think in ways machines cannot. I'll direct the cows using signals they understand. If we act carefully, the predator will be scared off before it harms anyone." She moved first, calmly but confidently, walking toward the nervous herd while Jard followed. Her hands moved in small gestures, her voice carrying quiet, authoritative tones that the animals recognized. Slowly, she guided the cows away from the trees where the predator could hide, moving them toward a safer area near reinforced fencing. The predator watched from the shadows, its eyes glinting in the sunlight. It hesitated as Myra advanced, clearly assessing the situation. Unlike drones, which could only act according to pre-programmed protocols, Myra adjusted in real time, responding to the predator's behavior. She used pauses, shifts in weight, and soft vocal signals to redirect the herd without startling them. Jard could only watch in awe as she moved. One misstep, one sudden sound, and the herd could scatter, sending the cattle toward danger instead of safety. Yet Myra was patient, calculating, precise. She read the animals' reactions and adjusted, sometimes taking a step back, other times moving forward to close a gap. The predator, frustrated by the humans' control over the herd, let out a low growl and retreated slightly. Myra took advantage of the moment, slowly moving the cattle closer to safety. By mid-morning, the entire northern herd had been guided back to the central pens, away from danger. The predator had vanished into the distant tree line, defeated not by brute force but by human strategy and intuition. Jard shook his head. "I don't know how you do it," he said. "No machine could have done what you just did, not even my strongest drones." Myra smiled faintly, brushing mud from her hands. "Machines follow rules. Humans understand context. They adapt to what they see and feel. That's the difference." The day moved on, but the calm was short-lived. As the workers repaired the remaining fences and checked water supplies, one of the ranch hands came running toward Jard, shouting about another issue. A small group of calves had wandered toward a shallow river on the southern edge of the property, their movements frantic and uncontrolled. Jard felt a surge of anxiety. "Not again," he muttered. The storm destabilized everything. Now the calves are scattered and the water levels are higher than usual. They could be in danger. Myra, already alert, grabbed a rope and motioned for the ranch hands to follow. "We'll guide them," she said, "but we must be careful. Calves panic easily, and if we force them, they'll scatter. Humans can anticipate that behavior. Machines cannot." They moved toward the southern edge, Myra taking the lead. She assessed the river's current and the surrounding terrain, predicting where the calves might move next. She gestured gently, her voice calm but firm, guiding the first calf away from the water's edge. Jard watched as she worked, amazed at her ability to manage the herd without chaos. The calves responded to her presence, instinctively trusting her signals. Where a drone might have pushed them recklessly, she moved with patience, using the natural instincts of the animals to guide them safely. By late afternoon, the last of the calves had been returned to safety. Myra collapsed onto the muddy ground for a moment, exhausted but triumphant. "That's done," she said, her voice steady despite fatigue. "We've prevented injuries and panic. The herd is safe again." Jard helped her to her feet. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said sincerely. "Every time there's a problem, you see a solution that I can't. You're remarkable." Myra shook her head. "Not remarkable, just human," she said. "We have the ability to adapt, to think, to anticipate. It's what keeps us alive when nature tests us. That's all." The evening arrived, casting long shadows across the wet plains. The herd was calm now, grazing quietly in the fading sunlight. The drones were patrolling, but their movements were secondary now. Myra had proven that human instinct and adaptability were more valuable than technology alone. Jard walked beside her, watching the herd. "You've changed everything here," he said quietly. "The storm was only the beginning. I can see that now. You've shown me what humans are capable of, even in a world full of machines and technology." Myra smiled faintly. "That's the lesson," she said. "Machines help, but humans lead. We think, we adapt, we act when it matters most. That's what makes the difference." Night fell and the ranch settled into quiet routine. Myra continued her work, checking fences, inspecting water levels, and observing the herd. Jard felt a deep sense of gratitude and respect. She had not only saved the ranch from natural disasters, but had also reminded him of the true value of human ingenuity. As he watched her from the porch, he realized that the storm and the predator had been more than challenges. They had been tests. And Myra had passed everyone with skill, patience, and courage. She was more than a visitor. She was a force that had strengthened the ranch in ways technology never could. The following day, the repairs were complete, and the herd was thriving once more. Myra walked the fields, her presence calm but commanding. Jard noticed how quickly the workers had adopted her methods, observing and learning from her approach. She had taught them something no manual or machine could: the power of observation, intuition, and adaptability. Jard finally understood what made her unique. It wasn't just bravery, it was her ability to think in unpredictable situations, to anticipate outcomes, and to act decisively. Humans, he realized, could do what no machine or algorithm could. They could read the world in ways that defied logic yet always seemed correct. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the plains, Jard felt a deep sense of hope. The ranch had survived the storm and the predator. The cattle were safe, and the land was slowly recovering. And most importantly, a human had shown him that courage, intelligence, and adaptability were the true miracles of survival. He watched Myra move through the herd, her hands guiding, her voice gentle but firm. She was more than a visitor now. She was a part of the ranch, a living reminder of what humans could do when they faced the challenges of the wild frontier. Jard knew that the days ahead would bring more obstacles: storms, accidents, predators, but he no longer feared them. With Myra's guidance, he had learned that humans, with their courage, quick thinking, and adaptability, could face any challenge. Technology was powerful, but it was humans who made the difference. As the afternoon sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the plains, Jard felt a rare sense of peace. The ranch was alive, the herd was safe, and for the first time he felt confident that no storm, no predator, and no unexpected challenge could destroy what humans were capable of achieving. Myra walked back toward the main house, brushing mud from her coat and smiling faintly. Jard followed, feeling a deep sense of admiration. "You've saved this place more than once," he said quietly, "and I know you'll save it again if you have to. I'm glad you're here." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. "I'll stay," she said simply. "As long as there are challenges, I'll be here. Humans adapt, humans protect, humans survive. That's what I do." Jard watched her, understanding at last the truth of her words. It was not the machines, not the fences, not the drones that had saved his ranch. It was the human heart, the human mind, the human courage to act when all seemed lost. And with Myra at his side, he knew they could face anything Aurora 7 could throw at them. The morning after the predator scare, the ranch was quiet again, but Jard Kale knew the quiet would not last. Aurora 7 was unpredictable. Just as the herd had survived the storm and the predator had tested their instincts, another challenge was approaching, one that would test more than courage. It would test planning, intelligence, and human ingenuity. Myra was already up, moving through the ranch with her usual precision. She inspected water troughs, feeding stations, and the repaired fences. Every step she took, she seemed to anticipate problems before they happened, checking for weak posts, soft soil, and even subtle signs of animal stress. She paused at the edge of the pasture, looking toward the horizon where a layer of mist was slowly rising. Jard joined her, sipping his coffee. "Looks peaceful," he said, "but I have a feeling it won't stay that way." Myra shook her head. "It's not the weather," she said. "The northern plains show signs of low soil stability. After the storm, there's a risk of the ground giving way near the river channel. If a cow wanders too close, it could be swept away." Jard frowned, realizing she was right. The heavy rainfall had softened the ground, and some areas were unstable. Machines could not detect it yet. They relied on sensors that measured water levels and structural stress, but subtle weaknesses could go unnoticed. "We need to mark it," he said. "Keep the cattle away." Myra nodded. "Yes. But we also need to plan evacuation routes in case the soil gives way or water rises unexpectedly. Humans can adapt faster than sensors. I'll show you how." By mid-morning, Myra had organized a small team of ranch hands. Together, they marked unsafe areas with flags, created temporary barriers, and walked the herd through safe paths, guiding them gently while keeping stress low. She demonstrated ways to anticipate the animals' movements, teaching the ranch hands how to read signs like ear flicks, tail swishes, and shifts in weight. Jard watched, amazed. Every action she took was deliberate yet flexible. Where machines followed strict commands, Myra adapted instantly to changing conditions. She guided a nervous cow away from soft soil, intercepted a calf that had wandered too close to the edge, and adjusted her path as new hazards appeared. By noon, the herd was secured and the danger zones were clearly marked. Jard allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but it was short-lived. Myra noticed movement on the horizon, a distant dust cloud rising from the far plains. She squinted, her instincts immediately alert. "Trouble," she said. "That's not weather, something else is coming." Jard followed her gaze. The dust cloud grew, and soon the sound of hooves reached them. A rival rancher from the neighboring property had brought his herd close to Jard's land, likely looking for better grazing or water. Jard had known the other rancher, a man named Torin Vault, was competitive, but he had never expected him to push into his territory so aggressively. Myra stepped forward, calm but ready. "We need to protect our herd without confrontation. Humans can negotiate, anticipate, and control the situation in ways machines cannot. I'll guide the cattle and distract the intruders if necessary." Jard nodded. "Do what you need to do. I'll support you." Myra moved to intercept the encroaching herd. Using gentle signals, she guided Jard's cattle toward safe pens while subtly redirecting Torin's animals away from the fragile riverbanks and weakened fences. She shouted commands to the ranch hands, who followed her lead, moving quickly and efficiently. Torin approached, waving his hands. "Step aside, Kale. This land is needed for my herd." Jard shook his head. "This is my land," he said. "You can't just push your animals onto my property." Myra stepped between them, her calm presence commanding attention. "Listen," she said firmly. "There is no need for conflict. You can move your herd back or we can guide them safely around the weak areas, but if you force your animals through here, you risk injury to both herds. Humans can manage this. Machines cannot. You have to act wisely." Torin hesitated, surprised by Myra's confidence. He had dealt with technology before, drones, fences, automated gates, but he had never faced someone who could control a herd with human skill and foresight. Slowly, he nodded and followed her instructions, moving his cattle along a safer route. By late afternoon, both herds were settled, and the immediate danger had passed. Jard felt a deep sense of relief. Myra had not only protected his animals, but had also diffused a potentially dangerous human conflict, using strategy and calm thinking rather than force. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the plains, Myra inspected the northern pastures once more. "We're not done yet," she said. "The soil is still weak and heavy rain could come again. We need long-term solutions." Jard followed her, intrigued. "What do you suggest?" She pointed to areas where the storm had caused erosion. "We can reinforce the banks, plant fast-growing vegetation to stabilize the soil, and adjust the herd's grazing patterns to prevent overuse of fragile areas. Humans can plan for the future in ways machines cannot predict. It's about thinking ahead and adapting constantly." Over the next several hours, they worked together, reinforcing soil, redirecting water flow, and creating temporary shelters for the most vulnerable animals. The ranch hands followed Myra's instructions carefully, learning to anticipate problems and act proactively rather than reactively. Night fell, and the ranch finally settled into a calm routine. The cattle grazed quietly, the drones patrolled their usual paths, and the workers rested after the long day. Jard and Myra walked along the main fence line, watching the stars appear above the plains. "You're incredible," Jard said quietly. "I've always relied on machines, but you've shown me what humans can do. You're a miracle." Myra smiled faintly. "Not a miracle, just human. We can adapt, think, and protect. That's what makes us strong." Jard nodded, understanding at last. "I've been too reliant on technology," he admitted. "You've reminded me that humans are capable of things machines will never do. You've changed how I see this ranch and everything else." The following morning, Myra moved through the ranch again, checking fences, water levels, and the herd's behavior. Jard watched her work, noticing how she predicted problems before they arose and acted with precision. Her presence was transforming the ranch, not just physically but mentally. She had taught everyone to anticipate, adapt, and act with intelligence and care. By midday, Myra gathered the ranch hands. "We need to create permanent reinforcements," she said. "Temporary fixes are good, but they won't withstand the next storm or another unforeseen threat. Humans can plan for long-term survival, and that's what we'll do." Jard watched, impressed by her leadership. She explained where new fences should be built, how to plant vegetation to stabilize the soil, and how to guide the herd to avoid fragile areas. The workers listened carefully, clearly inspired by her knowledge and calm authority. Hours passed as they worked together. The ranch slowly transformed from a place recovering from disaster into a place prepared for the future. Myra's human ingenuity and foresight made all the difference. Where machines might have responded to immediate problems, she anticipated multiple scenarios, planning for dangers that had not yet arrived. By evening, the ranch was secure. The herd was healthy, the fences reinforced, and the land stabilized. Jard felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Myra had not only saved his animals during the storm and the predator incident, but had also prepared them for the future. Her human skills, intuition, adaptability, and foresight had proven invaluable. As they watched the sun set over the plains, casting warm light across the pastures, Jard spoke quietly. "I owe you more than I can say. You've saved this ranch not once but many times, and you've taught us all what humans are capable of." Myra looked at him, her eyes calm and thoughtful. "We don't need miracles," she said. "We need humans who think, adapt, and act when it matters. That's enough." Jard nodded, understanding fully now. Humans had an advantage no machine could ever match. They could predict, adapt, and act with creativity and courage. Myra had shown him that every challenge, no matter how great, could be overcome with careful thought and decisive action. The night settled over the ranch, quiet and peaceful. The cattle grazed under the stars, the drones patrolled silently, and the humans rested, prepared for whatever Aurora 7 might throw at them next. Jard felt hope rising inside him. With Myra's guidance, the ranch was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. Humans were leading the way, and he knew that as long as they remained adaptable, courageous, and clever, nothing could truly threaten them. The dawn broke over the Aurora 7 plains, soft light spilling across wet grass and muddy trails. The storm had passed days ago, but its aftermath lingered in the soil, in the scattered debris, and in the minds of the ranch hands. Jard Kale walked along the fence line, his thoughts heavy with the lessons of the past week. The ranch had survived storms, predators, and human conflicts, but he knew the planet was never truly safe. Nature had a way of testing humans, and he could feel that the next challenge was approaching. Myra was already up, moving across the pastures with her usual calm and precision. She checked fences, examined the water troughs, and observed the cattle grazing quietly under the early sun. Her eyes were sharp, scanning for anything unusual, any subtle signs of potential danger. She paused, lifting a hand to point at the river channel. The soil near the banks was still soft, and the water level had risen slightly overnight. Jard approached her, concern in his voice. "Is it going to rain again?" Myra shook her head. "Not yet, but the river could swell if the snow melt from the northern hills increases. It's predictable, but it's still a threat. Humans can act before danger arrives." "That's our advantage," he nodded, trusting her instincts. "Then what do? "We prepare," she said simply. "We reinforce the banks, create temporary barriers, and keep the herd guided away from weak spots. We anticipate, we adapt, and we act. That's what humans do better than machines." The day began with focused activity. Myra led the ranch hands to repair and reinforce fences, plant quick-growing vegetation to stabilize the riverbank, and create new paths for the cattle to follow in case of sudden water rise. Jard observed quietly, amazed at her ability to predict potential problems and solve them before they became disasters. As the sun climbed higher, dark clouds appeared on the horizon. Not a storm, but a layer of dense mist rolling in from the northern plains, hiding subtle movements. Myra's instincts immediately went on alert. "Something's coming," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We need to secure the herd and be ready for anything." Before Jard could ask, a shadow moved in the mist. A small herd of wild, semi-feral cattle had drifted onto the ranch, attracted by fresh grazing and water. They were nervous, aggressive, and unaccustomed to human guidance. The situation was delicate. If the animals panicked, they could trample fences, scatter Jard's herd, or even fall into the soft riverbank. Myra didn't hesitate. She moved toward the intruding herd, her body language calm but authoritative. She clapped her hands and used subtle gestures to redirect the animals, guiding them toward a corner of the pasture where they could be temporarily contained. The intruders hesitated, then followed, her presence commanding trust without force. Jard watched, astounded. Machines could have only reacted slowly, and even trained ranch hands would struggle with the wild herd. Myra, using only human instinct, had already gained control. She anticipated the herd's panic, calculated their paths, and adjusted in real time. Hours passed as she guided the intruders, reinforced barriers, and ensured Jard's cattle remained calm. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows over the plains, but Myra worked tirelessly, her focus unbroken. Even the ranch hands, seasoned experts in Aurora 7's harsh conditions, watched in awe as she moved through the chaos with patience, skill, and precision. By late afternoon, the wild herd was safely contained, and Jard's cattle had returned to grazing peacefully. Myra finally paused, brushing mud and sweat from her coat. "That's done for now," she said quietly. "But this shows how quickly things can change. Nature doesn't wait for machines. Humans must act first." Jard approached her, admiration clear in his voice. "You've done it again," he said. "No storm, no predator, no human conflict. Not even a wild herd could defeat you. I don't know what I would do without you." Myra smiled faintly. "You would survive," she said. "But humans can make survival easier, faster, and safer, that's all." As the sun began to set, Jard realized that Myra had not only protected the herd but had transformed the ranch itself. She had taught the ranch hands to anticipate problems, to act decisively, and to adapt in real time. The ranch was no longer just a place of machines and fences. It was a place guided by human skill and foresight, ready for the unpredictable challenges of Aurora 7. Night fell, and the ranch settled into quiet routine. The herd grazed under the stars, the temporary barriers holding the wild cattle at bay, and the workers rested. Jard walked beside Myra, watching her move with confidence, checking fences, and making notes about the next day's work. "I've been thinking," Jard said softly. "This ranch, it's stronger now than ever before, not because of money or drones, because of you. You've shown me what humans can do." Myra paused, looking at the horizon. "Humans adapt. Humans think, humans act, machines help, but humans lead. That's what makes us strong. That's what will keep this ranch safe. Jard nodded, understanding fully now. He had relied on technology for years, trusting machines to solve problems. But no machine could anticipate danger, guide animals, or negotiate with unpredictability like a human could. Myra had proven that humans were more than clever, they were indispensable. The next morning brought another test, subtle but dangerous. A sudden temperature drop in the northern plains caused the river to rise faster than anticipated. The banks, still soft from the previous storm, threatened to collapse. Myra moved quickly, directing the ranch hands to create additional barriers and guiding the cattle to higher, safer ground. She analyzed the river's flow, the soil's condition, and the herd's movement, acting in a way no algorithm could. Jard watched her in awe as she worked, her decisions precise, her movements deliberate, and her understanding of the land instinctive. The river rose dangerously close to the pens, but Myra's quick thinking and guidance kept the herd safe. By mid-afternoon, the crisis had passed and the cattle were unharmed. "That was too close," Jard said, shaking his head. "If you hadn't acted, some of them could have been lost." Myra wiped her brow and smiled faintly. "Humans can adapt," she said simply. "We act when it matters most, that's our strength." The days that followed were filled with smaller challenges, checking for weak spots in fences, adjusting grazing patterns, monitoring water levels, and keeping the wild herd under control. Each time, Myra acted decisively, anticipating problems before they arose. Jard realized that her presence had transformed the ranch from a reactive place to a proactive one, capable of surviving whatever Aurora 7 might throw at it next. Finally, one evening, as the sun set over the plains, Jard called Myra to the main house. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice serious. "This ranch, it's not just my property anymore. You've saved it, strengthened it, and taught all of us what humans are capable of. I want you to stay here permanently, not as an employee, but as a partner." Myra looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I will stay," she said. "As long as there are challenges, I'll be here. Humans adapt, protect, and survive. That's what I do." Jard smiled, feeling a deep sense of relief and pride. The ranch had faced storms, predators, and unpredictable natural hazards, and it had survived, thanks to Myra. Her human skills had proven more valuable than any machine or fence. She had shown that humans could think, adapt, and act in ways that no technology could replicate. The ranch settled into a new rhythm, guided by human insight rather than technology alone. The cattle grazed peacefully, the fences were secure, and the land slowly recovered from the storms and floods. The workers followed Myra's lead, learning to anticipate problems, act decisively, and adapt to changing conditions. One evening, as the stars appeared above the plains, Jard stood beside Myra on the porch, watching the herd move quietly in the moonlight. "I've learned something important," he said softly. "Machines help, but humans make the difference. You've reminded me of that, I'll never forget it." Myra smiled, the cool night wind lifting her hair. "Humans adapt, humans survive, humans protect. That's all anyone needs to know." The ranch had survived storms, predators, and human conflict, and it had emerged stronger than ever. The true miracle was not a person, a machine, or a tool. It was the human spirit, the courage to act, the intelligence to anticipate, and the resilience to endure. Myra had embodied all of it, proving that humans, even on a harsh planet like Aurora 7, could face any challenge and overcome it. As the months passed, the ranch flourished. Myra stayed as promised, guiding the herd, teaching the ranch hands, and planning for future challenges. Jard realized that the true value of the ranch was no longer in its land or technology. It was in its people, led by Myra's example. Humans had proven themselves indispensable, adaptable, and resilient. And under the twin moons of Aurora 7, the herd grazed peacefully, the fences stood strong, and the ranch thrived. Not because of machines, not because of wealth, but because of humans who could think, act, and protect when it mattered most. Jard finally understood the truth of what Myra had shown him. Humans were not just part of the ecosystem. They were the force that could guide, protect, and preserve life in ways nothing else could. And as long as humans like Myra walked the plains of Aurora 7, there was no challenge too great, no storm too fierce, and no danger too unpredictable to face and overcome. The ranch had survived. The humans had prevailed. And a new era had begun, one defined not by technology alone, but by courage, intelligence, and the uniquely human ability to act when it mattered most.